submitted to the Ministry and the Federation of Law Societies was a curriculum outlining what would be the mandatory courses. On that curriculum was Indigenous Learning 2805 Native Canadian Worldviews, which last week at a Senate meeting they struck from the curriculum. So as students, we're very offended that they decided to backtrack on this, and we're especially offended that they didn't inform the Ministry, the Federation of Law Societies, or Anishinaabe Métis, who was integral to getting the law school in the first place.
Or Dennis McPherson. He found out.
Who is the head of the Department of Indigenous Learning.
When did Dennis find out?
He found out about 4 days before they made the decision.
4 days before they made the decision, he sent an email to Mr. Stusser asking him what he has to do with this program to prepare it for September. He was told in what I would call a condescending manner that it was going to be in the hands of the Faculty of Law now. It was changing to Native Canadian Worldviews and the Law 1530. And this is a great thing for you because you have less work to do. That was a slap across the face. That's not giving me less work to do. That's insulting me. And that's insulting all of your students. The people who care about this course, the people who have had their lives changed because of this course. How many people here have taken Native Canadian Worldviews? Of the people here, what has the course done for you?
A lot.
Everything changed, everything.
You want to give a little bit of experience?
Well, if you've taken the class, I study anthropology, so I'm like kind of a taboo issue.
But we love her.
I think it can actually change anthropology altogether, and it should be mandatory for anybody studying like boreal forest archaeology or anything like that. So it's really, really important for my studies as well as everybody else's. So I actually applied to the law school. I think it's really integral for understanding how philosophy can change your point of view when dealing with the law.
I really want to say thank you for that point of view because that introduced me to something that I didn't know you were thinking. And to hear somebody say that they think that they can change a field, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create the space for Indigenous learning, Indigenous knowledges to be accepted into any institution in Canada. So this is step one.
So when the Dean of the Law School, Lee Stusser, was defending the changes in front of Senate on February 15th, his arguments revolved around the fact that, number one, this would put Lakehead in a position where it's the only law school in Canada with a non-law component, and number two, he felt like this would compromise the credibility of the program and that it wouldn't be taken seriously. Now, we have two problems with his argument. Number one, Lakehead's law school was approved specifically because it would have a unique curriculum, not in spite of the fact it would have a unique curriculum. The second problem with the argument is that he is suggesting, as the dean of a law school which is oriented towards Indigenous issues, that there is a difference between an Indigenous legal education and a credible legal education, and I find that argument unacceptable.
I think it's also, my name's Alaya.
Alaya?
Alaya, hi. I think it's also like, from what I understand, because I haven't taken this course, but I know people that have and people study for it, McPherson's course teaches you to think critically and for yourself and challenge all this old dogma, and I think that is in big part what the law school doesn't want to see, is because they want to indoctrinate and not have people challenge the old ways. And I'd also like to say that this thing going through is really important to me, even though I'm not planning to go to law school, and I'm not in a field like anthropology. It just as a plain Canadian and citizen of this community, it's important for us to be, educating and listening with our Indigenous hearts to Indigenous ways of knowing, and to have people empowered to legally fight for Indigenous rights, because I think that will make Canada and our world a better place. So it's important to all of us.
I'd like to elaborate on that. I think that is very profound, and I think that there's a very specific statement being made here by what's happened to this program. And I think it's very, very detrimental to our communities. We live in these communities. We know what's important to the people in these communities. Look around. This is a very diverse group of individuals with varying histories and experiences, and we are all coming together for one purpose, for inclusion, for functionality, to be equipped with the tools to facilitate a better society tomorrow. And that's what this is about. This is not about reproducing the same behaviors, attitude, knowledge that has been problematic for anybody outside of the dominant mode of thought, and even those within that. This is us coming together to take a stand on inclusion and tolerance, and it's very important that this happens and that we celebrate our differences and we do not marginalize our differences. We must celebrate this.
Thank you. And Elia, to go back to what you were saying regarding not going to law school, that's okay. If anybody tries to bring the argument forth that because you're not going to law school, this shouldn't be your fight, not true.
This is not just about the law school. This is about our communities. This is about us as people coming together for what's right.
And
This
it's
is about
building
challenge-
credible relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is about challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're talking about, Elia.
What is legitimate? What is illegitimate? What is valid? What
Who
is
decides
invalid?
what is legitimate and what is illegitimate?
Absolutely.
Who
So-
says that we have or we don't have knowledge, or that knowledge is accepted or unaccepted? Who determines this in today's society? If it comes down to it and we fight loud enough, we determine. Who decides what knowledges are accepted into this institution?
So as students, we have two requests. Number one, that administration, by whatever means are necessary, reinstate Indigenous Learning 2805 into the curriculum of the law school. And number two, if the Senate votes to uphold its decision on February 15th, that they issue a letter to the Ministry, to the Federation of Law Societies, and to Anishinaabe Nation justifying their changes.
That's very reasonable.
Do you have the letter with you?
We do, yeah.
Do you mind reading it for us?
Sure.
Just so I know what's happening.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ayub, for suggesting.
Yeah. Dear President Stevenson, on February 15th, the Senate at Lakehead University approved a program change put forth by the Faculty of Law. This change fundamentally altered the core curriculum of Lakehead's nascent law school and the principles upon which the school was founded and developed. At the Senate meeting, the representative of the law school proposed to replace Indigenous Learning 2805 Native Canadian Worldviews with Law 1530 Native Canadian Worldviews in the law. Nominal similarities notwithstanding, there are numerous distinctions between the two courses which alter its fundamental pedagogical purposes. Number one, whereas 2805 is a full credit, Law 1530 will be a half credit. Number two, whereas 2805 was developed over 20 years by a member of the Department of Indigenous Learning who is also trained as a lawyer in the Western tradition, 1530 will be developed anew by law faculty. Number three, whereas the primary focus of 2805 was to fit Western law within the worldviews of Indigenous peoples, the primary focus of 1530 will be to fit Indigenous peoples within the law. We understand that Dean Lee Stusser defended the changes before Senate by suggesting that the original curriculum, which the ministry had approved, could compromise the integrity of the law program. He pointed out that there is no other law program he is aware of with a mandatory non-law component. While we respect Mr. Stusser's perspective, we find his argument unconvincing and problematic. His comments are unconvincing because Lakehead's law school was approved on the premise that Indigenous Learning 2805 would be part of a unique curriculum oriented towards Indigenous worldviews. Mr. Stusser's comments are problematic because they suggest that an Indigenous legal education is incompatible with a credible legal education. As citizens and students, we are disappointed that the law school has chosen to walk away from its commitment to including Indigenous perspectives in the curriculum in a meaningful way, even before its inaugural class. We are especially disappointed that the Senate approved this program change on the premise that it would preserve the academic and credibility of the law school. We feel that the law school has acted disingenuously and contrary to the spirit of their accreditation. As citizens and members of Thunder Bay and the region, we request the following. Number one, that the administration of Lakehead University reinstate Indigenous Learning 2805 by whatever means are necessary. Number two, that if the Senate votes to uphold its February 15th decision, the Lakehead University issue a letter to the Anishinaabe Nation, as well as other regional Indigenous organizations and the relevant accreditation bodies, informing them of the changes and providing whatever justification may be necessary. Sincerely, the People's Committee for the Integrity of Academic Programming.
I guess we should get comfortable.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. I guess it's time to get comfortable.
It's time to get comfortable.
If you